One of the leaders in the, whether we're going to call it low lead or lead-free, depending on terminology, on valves for, and you're going to either say it potable water or potable water. This is going to be a standard in January, was it 4th of 2014. So John and Jim are going to go over some of the valves here, some of the regulation, what's coming, what they have, what to look for and everything. This is more than 6 months away, but it's going to take us a while to get geared up and go on and get our customers focused on this. So we're doing this training a little bit ahead of time, but we're going to need time to get this all squared away. We want to make sure everybody knows their stuff. So John, it's all yours.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. I want to thank everyone for coming. And for those who I haven't met, I'm John Flagg. I'm the regional manager for Milwaukee. And with me is Jim Wigley. Jim's with James Martin Company, our rep in eastern Pennsylvania. And we're going to talk about the new legislation affecting the valve industry and the plumbing industry. It's having a significant impact on what we do, and will affect you folks come January. And it's actually not too early. We're doing a lot of these. Distributors are already gearing up, placing stock orders, trying to get ahead of the curve and have valves available when they're needed. Concern is going to be late in the year when this legislation moves forward. You know, when everybody jumps on board, that could actually be shortages. So it's not too early to learn about this and kind of get a plan for January. So who would have thought that there's lead in plumbing products? When I started doing these, I got two reactions. Well, let me back up, and first of all, thank you guys for your hard work and support. We really value what you do. We truly consider you a partner, and you had a good year last year. You're ahead so far this year, and we really want to thank you for your hard work. So, getting into the low lead, two reactions. One, some people are surprised to hear that there's lead in plumbing products. I've been in the valve business for over 35 years, and it's always been that way. You kind of take it for granted. And let me turn my clicker on. There we go. Working. Okay, it was working.
You want me to get Jason?
Here we go. Should be working. Try that. Here we go. Okay. So, this is Milwaukee's response to federal legislation, Senate Bill S-3874, mandating reduction in lead in plumbing products. As I started to say, I get two reactions. Some people are surprised to hear there's lead in plumbing products, and then conversely, you always get the veteran plumber who will tell you that this is nonsense, you know, there's always been lead. What about all the lead pipes in the street of Philadelphia? You know, my grandmother's house was all lead and she lived to be 100. So, you know, I did a little research and was surprised to learn that word plumbing is actually Latin for lead. And that's how far back it goes. And you know, the Romans used lead quite extensively, and they probably invented plumbing, and it was all made out of lead. And the atomic symbol for lead is Pb. So at one time, lead was predominantly used in plumbing. But it changed as new materials became available, and it was probably mid-19th century when things changed significantly, and the amount of lead gradually came down to where it's what I thought was minimal. You know, now we're using copper tubing, plastic pipe, and so forth. But there is lead in bronze and brass products, not just valves. So where are we at today? Bronze castings, your ball valves, your BA100, BA150s, your Apollo 70, NIPCO 585s. They're made of ASTM B584 bronze. It's 6 to 8% lead. Your gates, globes, and checks. This is the material I was trained on when I started. It's called 85 3/5 metal. It's 85% copper, 5% tin, 5% zinc, 5% lead. Your brass ball valves, your 485s, 475s, NIPCO FP600s, ASTM B283, 1.5 to 2.5% lead, all at one time met the Clean Water Act. But the Clean Water Act has now been amended to reduce these levels. So what's the problem? We all know lead, it's pretty much a given that it's no good for you. But what can happen is it can leach. It can leach out of the metal. And how much leaches out depends on a number of factors. And that is the metal type, the metal structure, whether it's a forging or a casting, the amount of surface area the water contacts, whether there's pockets the water can lay. And that all is a function of how much lead will leach out. Less lead will leach out of a forging before it'll leach out of a casting. So if you looked at a BA 485, it'll have a UL water quality symbol on it. And that met NSF 61 low lead leaching. We also took the BA 100 a couple years ago and we did some additional machining to smooth out the interior, and we got it to meet NSF 61. And what they would do, NSF would take a valve, fill it with water, and then they would do a chemical analysis of that water to find out how much lead came out. And if it met a certain parts per million, it would get approval for NSF 61. All your brass ball valves, pretty much, no matter whose you look at, would meet that specification. We were the only ones that did it in a bronze valve. So, this is no longer applicable because it's not now a low lead leaching law, it's a low lead content. Now NSF 61, when this law passed, it went to NSF 61.8 Annex G, and this year it's been superseded by ANSI 372. So that's what we're complying to at this point in time. It's NSF ANSI 372. So it went from NSF 61, NSF 61.8, NSF 61 Annex G, and now it's ANSI 372. And it takes into consideration all the components of a ball valve. It's the body, tailpiece, and the ball, the stem. It's the entire product. Coatings don't count. So if you put epoxy on or you chrome plate the ball, that's not going to help you pass the standard. The law doesn't take into consideration coatings. So, the legislation mandates that components in potable water be less than 0.25%, and it's water that's anticipated for human consumption. And I gave everyone a copy of the law. As you can see, there's not much to it. It's basically a page or 2 pages. This started in California in 2010. It went to Vermont a year later, went to Maryland last year, Louisiana this year. So there's 4 states enforcing it at this time. And now, with it coming nationally in January, we're starting to see distributors gear up for it. But you'll see terms like lead-free, and that's really a misnomer. What no lead means is a max of 0.25%. So you still have a trace element of lead in the products. There's a copy of the law. You can't read that, but you'll have it. And there's a formula used, and that's the second page of that law. I don't understand it. I failed trigonometry, but it's basically an average of the weight, the wetted surface, the average content that comes in contact with the water. Jim, can I have another handout? So this is amendment to the Safe Drinking Water Act. Goes into effect in January. And this is a point of controversy right here. We've interpreted it to be 2 inch and down. And I'll read the statement, and you can see why it's confusing. There's really 2 exemptions. The first exemption is pipes, pipe fittings, plumbing fittings, fixtures, backflow preventers, used exclusively for non-potable services such as manufacturing, industrial processing, irrigation, outdoor watering, and that's a lot of what IPS does, industrial processing. That's exempt. So there's a lot of applications where this material is not required, and that's important to know. Then the second part under exemptions, there's a statement that says, water distribution main gate valves that are 2 inches in diameter or larger. We interpret that to be anything over 2 inches exempt. There are people who interpret that to be inside versus outside the building. When you look at water distribution main gate valves. Some people think that's the first gate valve inside your house before the meter. So there's a lot of things open to interpretation. And we think they'll be clarified at some point in time when the EPA looks at this and starts to enforce it. And that's not going to happen until the fall. Enforcement's going to come under the EPA, and they're not going to even look at this until later this year. But we have competitors that read that statement and says gate valves are exempt, but ball valves aren't. And we're not sure whoever wrote this law knows ball valve from a gate valve. So you do find products over 2 inch, and we have our butterfly valve approved, but we're going to expand the ball valve line up to 3 because we're seeing a demand for it. And so right now we're 2 inch and down, but again, this is an evolving thing as it becomes open to interpretation. So that's how we interpreted it originally, but we're going to add to the product line to go higher. In California, you had to have a third-party certification. We use a company called Water Quality Associates, and on our cut sheets you'll see a seal from Water Quality that they've approved it to meet this law. Federally, you don't need third-party, but pretty much everyone got it because if you wanted to sell in California, you had to have it. So the valves, all our low lead will be third-party certified. We're not allowed to do it. So we have gate globes and checks. We have some on the table. And here's the new material. Okay, the alloys we saw before, what the leaded valves were made of. Here, the bronze is ASTM B584, this C number, and now the lead is down to a trace, and what we've added is bismuth to the valve. In the brass, lead is down to a trace, and we've added silicon. The law doesn't tell you how to make it. So not every manufacturer is the same. NIPCO's not using bismuth. NIPCO's using silicon. Apollo's using bismuth. Milwaukee and Apollo, the alloys are very similar, if not the same. So not every manufacturer is the same, and the law didn't tell you how to make it. So there was also some trial and error involved in coming up with the right mix of elements. Valves will be coated. The brass valves will have C21 cast in the body. The brass valves will have 511. So, guys in the warehouse, that's one way you can identify the low lead versus the lead. It looks a little bit different, the color's a little different, but we put markings in it so we can keep them separate. And it's more expensive, 30 to 40% more money, typically throughout the industry. And here's why. The base metal's 20% more money. The metal people aren't going to give us any break anytime soon, especially as the demand picks up. It's harder to machine. Lead gave the valve some good qualities. It gave it malleability. It made it easy to machine. This wears the tooling out. There's higher scrap rates. It's harder to make. It's overall expensive. So will this come down at some point as demand picks up? You know, right now it's 4 states only requiring it, so demand's been somewhat low. It's been very disruptive to our standard production. You got to change tooling. You know, you can't cross-contaminate metal. So it's harder to make. So consequently, it costs more. And here's an overview of the line. We have bronze and brass gates. The brass gates are rated to 200 WOG, the bronze to 300. We've got rising and non-rising stem, threaded and sweat, and we have a globe, a bronze globe, brass and bronze checks, and a full line of ball valves. We also have three-piece. There's one on the table. It was a late addition. There was a big hospital project in California. The engineer wanted low lead three-piece valves, so we put it in the line. So it's not on this slide, but there's one here on the table. And you can see everything has a white handle. There'll be no steam rating. We're very concerned about these valves on steam, industrial applications, compressed air. It's more brittle. Again, without lead, it loses its malleable quality. All valves will have a white handle as an identifier. NIPCO just changed their valves to a white handle.
Is that going to be standard, the
Just
white handle?
On the low lead. All our others will stay the same. The red handles, the blue handles, that yellow handle.
I meant for the whole industry, it'll be white.
No, Watts
No?
is green.
Okay.
Now, we think that the law did not tell us how to mark the valve. We think MSS will get involved and come up with a uniform marking. We're using the white handle and those codes I mentioned. Other manufacturers are using LF. And as I started doing these, people would look at our valve and say, well, where does it say low lead? How do I know it's low lead? Well, here's our code numbers. Well, that doesn't mean anything to me. So moving forward, we're going to add letters to those code numbers to reflect the low lead or lead-free designation, just so the layman, the plumber on off the street can have something that, that he can refer to. But right now, we're white handle and those code numbers. I mentioned this, we've got material markings. We will not sell handles, and that's a question that comes up. We will not sell handles as a replacement part. There will be no switching handles in the field. All cartons will be marked, whether they comply or don't comply. Okay, so it leaves our building. It'll be marked one way or the other, so you know what it is. And it impacts all of our bronze and brass products. It does not affect our iron, stainless, or carbon steel. And what may happen is some people may see carbon and stainless as a alternate material to bronze.
Well, just like what you said with no steam rating, I mean, you're going to have to...
You'll still have your steam rating on your bronze, your 105s and 1151s and those things.
But there's nothing now, like you said, on the lead-free.
Lead-free, no steam. Let me tell you what happened. You may have heard of Fusan. Fusan is a very reputable company out of Taiwan that does private labeling for a lot of other companies. When I was at Crane, they made Crane's brass ball valve. They're involved in a recall of 300,000 valves that it's their threaded, gas-rated ball valve they made out of low lead, and they're cracking. I mean, I'm not bad-mouthing my competitor, it's public information. If you have one in your house, it's a $300 claim to have it replaced. So they have these gas-rated valves out there that are cracking. So is it the gas service? Is it the low lead on gas service, or the plumber not used to threading low lead valves? But 300 bucks times 300,000 pieces is a lot of money. So that's why Milwaukee is being very cautious. If you read that article that Jeff wrote for PM Magazine, what he's basically saying is, walk before you run. Don't just jump into a all lead-free situation. Okay? There will be, and some people are doing that. There are distributors, mostly on the plumbing side of the business, who are just making a wholesale change. Okay? In the case of IPS, it's not necessarily the case. You have a lot of applications and a lot of customers not in the plumbing, potable water business. So You know, and we'll talk more about that as we go forward. So what's your challenge? Maintaining your inventory, getting your inventory right for this change. We don't see it as a duplication. We see it as part of your inventory changing. We don't see it as carrying two different lines. Right now, you're selling some of your valves are going into plumbing. It's trying to figure out how much and what to stock. We had to do the same exercise for management. You know, they wanted a projection on what we expected the low lead to be. It was all guesswork. I think probably for IPS, I figured it might be 20%, 25%. It's just a guess, based on what I know about your business and your customer base. How do you tell your customer he's got to pay 30, 40% more? That's going to be a challenge too. But it's not just isolated to us, so everyone's in that boat. I was talking to a guy in New Jersey. He said Watts was in telling him it was going to be 50% more. So, and for the contractor, it's knowing where to use it, separating your chilled water from your potable water. Okay, you don't need it on chilled water, condenser water, your air conditioning. It's just the drinking water side. So for a mechanical contractor, it's knowing where to use it, separating those parts of the job. Why pay more for a low lead valve if I don't need it? So it looks the same, it doesn't react the same, and that's critical. This metal is different. It reacts differently to installation stresses, and Jeff's article is pretty good at talking about those things. We are in compliance now, and we're doing a lot of training. We're doing a lot of seminars with engineers. We've done some contractors. So we're trying to get the word out so people can start planning for this. Installation there are some installation issues. You know, the valves with lead had some forgiveness. You know, if you ran in an oversized piece of pipe or a nipple, maybe you didn't see that. But with the low lead, the valve might crack. So, and then in soldering, it heats up faster. There has been soldering issues with some companies. NIPCO is recommending a specific soldering flux, brand by brand. We're not doing that. And there's one of the handouts is Jeff's recommendations for soldering. And basically it's good practice. Proper heat sink, evenly distribute the heat, heat it up slower. Don't use solders and flux with ammonia or something. Just going by memory, but that's why we think low lead press is going to be a big item going forward. So I had a contractor actually do a test. They brought competitors' valves in, they sweat them up as they typically would, cut the end of the valve off, and then dissected the end of the ball valve in the tubing and just banged on it with a sledgehammer. And the brass pieces come apart, and that was a non-issue that they came apart. What they look for is, they look for the silver coverage, how much coverage they got. We did pretty good. The bronze, when they did it, the bronze didn't even come apart. So the bronze performed exceptionally, better than the brass, but the brass did well also. I can tell you in Maryland, for now 2 years, I haven't had a single recall or problem with a valve. So, and again, we have experience now in 4 states, and the product line has done very well. But again, we're telling contractors, you know, use caution, bring valves into the shop and try it, you know, before you go out in the field and have issues. Stock to 2 weeks. Right now, if you wanted brass, we don't have it. We're sold out. We're we're expecting to get valves in the end of this month, but we've had a run on the brass. The brass is more in tune with the plumbing wholesalers rather than the bronze. So people are now placing stock orders, and the BA 485s, we don't have them. We're expecting the end of May, and we're actually expediting that delivery because they come from overseas. But we're in the process of gearing up for this. Bronze, the demand hasn't been as high. That's more of a bid and spec type product. So we haven't seen that rush on the bronze valves. But the brass valves right now, there's been high demand for those. Any questions on low lead?
So what's your liability or our liability if we sell a leaded valve for the wrong application?
Well, that's the concern everyone has. And the way it says, you shall not introduce into commerce products that are intended, water intended for human consumption. So, you know, is a garden hose valve intended for human consumption? You could say no, but you know, I probably
I
sip
still
out
do
of
it.
it when I'm washing the car. But so there's a lot of there's a lot of room for interpretation, but that's the concern, is liability. There's two concerns. Low lead going on a steam line that could fracture and hurt someone, or a leaded product going on a drinking water system where you're potentially contaminating the water. So there's two concerns. What distributors are doing, what we hear people talking about, is changing their descriptions. This valve contains lead, or this valve potable water only. This valve not for potable water. Putting it right in their descriptions, putting it on their packing slips. We've heard of people have a caveat on their pickup slips, asking customers to sign. You know, and I talk to people that say, well, that won't do you any good in a court of law, you know. So people are trying to just cover themselves by proper labeling and making the customer aware of what the valve is. And that's why some people are seeing it, well, I'm going to just change everything. And we don't think that's the right answer. There's still a lot of applications for the traditional metal, and low lead may not be suitable for those. Over time, maybe we'll find out otherwise, but we don't have that confidence that this new metal will work in every application, particularly industrial services. So, what's your liability? There will be liability. If it goes in the wrong place, it's probably proving. We had an attorney talk to us at our last sales meeting, and there was a case in Minnesota, and the judge's ruling was you would have to prove that you were injured by that specific valve, okay? And if you look at a plumbing system, it's not just valves, but the backflows, the pumps, the elbows, the fittings, they all contain some degree of lead over the limit. So how do you prove it was a Milwaukee Valve? Or so that ruling was you had to prove specifically that it came from, you know,
That'll change
an
every
item.
time though. Look at what asbestos.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
if you just even had your name associated with anything asbestos, you're
right.
in the lawsuits now. So
Right.
I predict in the
And
future.
they, you know, they expecting there will be frivolous lawsuits, you know. But the way, in doing these and talking to distributors, it's labeling, it's putting the caveat in the description. you know, so people know what they're getting, you know.
Okay, if I call you, John, I want an 1.5-inch ball valve. What's the first, what are the questions they should be asking to get the?
What's the application?
Where does it go?
What's the application? It's, I had an OEM, he wanted to buy, he buys brass ball valves. He makes skids, no drinking water application. And he was buying a brass ball valve that now is coming in as a low lead, and the price went up. So he asked us if we had an equal. So the equal was a low lead check valve. How are you using it? Glycol. Doesn't have to be low lead, you know. So that's the question. Where's it going? What's its intended use? And you know, there's thoughts. Well, I'll tell them it's going on my refrigeration. I don't want to pay more money, you know. So that's where something in writing, you know.
Jim, you need to unmute in case they have questions.
They can, yeah, they.
So if you give, I mean, you can give an opinion. If you tell someone, you know, that this valve will work in this application, I guess that's an intended, you know, warranty, I guess is the right term. But that's the concern. The concern is liability and covering yourself for misapplication.
Okay, once the questions have been asked, what if one of the warehouse guys picks the wrong valve? The description's right on the paperwork. And I'm good at asking these kind of questions. So they pick the
I'm
wrong
not
valve.
sure I know all the answers.
There would be some liability there then also, I would assume.
Yeah. Now, I heard in Maryland that a plumber, you know, Maryland, the enforcement's been very spotty, almost by county. The Washington D.C. Water Authority didn't enforce it. Come January, the entire state, but I did hear of plumbers being fined for putting a leaded valve in a potable water system. We've heard stories of, in California, secret shoppers coming into a counter, asking questions. How did the counterman respond to those questions? Believe it or not. I've heard this, Jim's heard this in Reading. There will be an instrument. It's very expensive, but it'll,
Yeah, the code official.
I'm not sure it was true, but Jim,
Yeah, the code official,
go ahead.
yeah, okay. Jay Montgomery's the code official in Reading, and he's the head of the city inspectors. EPA is going to do a training with all inspectors in Pennsylvania in the fall, late fall. They're going to be provided or getting a gun that basically they can sense lead in product that you install. So they can go through a building without even looking at the valve and identifying with the markings, handles, labeling, and just shoot a gun at the valves, and they can identify if there's lead content.
Yeah.
And that's how they're going to enforce it. The thing is, off the record, Jay Montgomery, the code official, said he may be lenient the first couple of times to tell a guy, remove that, put this in, that doesn't comply. It depends on how they're going to be trained and how it gets enforced to answer some of your questions, how hard they come down, or how many violations you make. That's where we went with that.
Yeah, the enforcement issue, no one's really sure yet, because this comes under the EPA. They'll push it down to the local level, so it's going to be a municipality responsibility, plumbing inspectors, codes, you know, what have you. There are people, you know, have the attitude, you know, they're not going to check, you know, who's going to look? I wouldn't take that chance, you know. But the industry's certainly changing and gearing up for it, you know, and it's reality we're faced with. You know, I did a presentation, and one attendee said, "Oh, you're only doing this because you get more money." And I can tell you that the industry did not want to change to, you know, go to do this without, I mean, we're being forced to. So it's a mandated change, and you know, we have to comply to it. I don't know, Chris, if I can answer all those questions about liability, but that's the concern, and, you know, I think a lot of it is, when it leaves our building, it'll be marked and labeled either way. So,
I believe that's what Chris's answer is, you could police it to your door. Because at that point, it's, the onus falls on that contractor when he leaves, where he puts
Where
that
it
out.
puts it, yeah.
As long as you've labeled
But
it and
we need to
identified it.
be aware and ask the right questions.
and it's not just valves, you have other products. It might make sense to have a low lead area, maybe, separate. And again, it's not duplicating inventory, you're taking, you know, I look at it as 90% of plumbing is sweat. So right there, I'm identifying copper end ball valves, sweat ball valves is probably the primary product, Jim.
Right,
You
yeah,
agree?
agreed, yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like the demand so far has been the BA 485, the sweat brass ball valve. That's what a lot of the plumbing, the copper type plumbing wholesaler carries and sells. So that's where the high demand has been so far. The other thing, there are projects being planned now, bid now, that may not break until January. There's no grandfathering in. It'll be illegal come January 4th to put a leaded product in a plumbing system. We're doing a job in Louisiana, it's LSU Medical Tower, and that was bid last year. And Louisiana started enforcing law in January. We get a call from the engineer in Cleveland. He needs a spec for all the ball valves now were changed to low lead. So that contractor bid the job probably at leaded prices, and now is faced with installing low lead product. So,
Ask the questions now.
yeah.
Hey,
That's what we're
John,
talking about.
Yes.
Dan in Williamsport, how are you?
Oh, good, Dan.
Valves that don't fall into the low lead, are they going to change in the future to offset the cost of a higher low lead valve, do you think, or will that always stay the same?
I don't see those valves changing.
Okay, I didn't know if they loosen up regulations, on them since they have a low lead line or not, so,
Those valves, that metal's been, I mean, it's been 100 years.
right?
ASTM B62 bronze, when I started with Fairbanks in '76, that was the metal then. It's still the same metal. It worked well. It was, you know, it's easier to cast, machine. I don't see that changing. Now, will low lead gravitate to other services? We don't know. Will it work on your chilled water systems? So maybe the low lead expands into other services. That's possible. So it's an unknown right now, Dan, as to
Right.
whether or not our traditional product line will be affected and to what degree. We know that volume is going to go down in place of low lead, so, but we see there's still a need for it. It's an important part of our business. So we're going to continue to make it and see what happens in the marketplace.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. The butterfly valves don't have lead. Even the aluminum bronze disc is lead free. So we got the ML 223 approved and third party certified. And then we're going to expand the ball valves up to 3-inch. And I think the gates too, bronze gates up to 3-inch.
So the butterfly valves, the aluminum bronze disc, they're already lead-free right now?
Already lead free right now.
So what we're getting in now, we're good on those?
You're
then?
good on those.
Okay.
Yeah. The cut sheets have the statement that says this meets less, and it's less than 0.25%. We actually have the ML third-party approved. Okay, so you do have an option on a large diameter. We're actually looking at the iron gates. Our competitor, you look at an iron gate, the iron doesn't have lead. You know, the bronze, the seat rings are bronze and the wedge facings are bronze. So when you consider the total surface area, it meets the spec. So NIPCO's actually got a little tag on their iron valve that is 0.25%. It's not third-party approved, but they labeled it as such. Now, there are FDA-approved iron valves that have epoxy coating on them. Watts makes one. But according to the law, epoxy doesn't relieve you of the lead responsibility. Okay? So,
Question for you. After the law goes into effect, will all non-compliant material be then non-returnable other than defect?
it's non-returnable.
Okay.
In your case, I think it's a non-issue because of your business, type of business. There are uses still for that traditional metal.
I just meant more of like if a customer has an excess from a job and it's something we're no longer selling, you're not gonna want it back.
We're not gonna want it back.
Right.
What people have wanted to do, initially, not understanding this, they were thinking that it was a wholesale change. Well, you're gonna take back my leaded stuff and I'll buy lead free. We're not.
This is an additional.
We're not
product,
doing that.
instead of a fee.
Now, there are companies that make products that are exclusively for plumbing. Apollo has some, you know, and, because they have a plumbing division. They have items that's the only intended use. Come June, they're not gonna make those with lead anymore. They're gonna stop mid-year. And then there's a window of, I forget what it was. They had an announcement out, I'm not telling any secrets or anything, but you had a window to return what you had. They were gonna give you like a 2-week, 30-day window. But come June, they're gonna stop making the leaded product, the potable water items. And if you had leaded product in your warehouse, you owned it. I know when Maryland switched, they had a plumbing board meeting, you know, and there was a plumber saying, I got a warehouse full of meters, of course you're gonna let me use them up. And they said, no, you know, there's no grandfathering in. You had a year to figure it out. So there was no returns. You know, and that's our position, and that's most everyone else's position on the returns.
Kim, that is a good question though, and I think that's something that you, if you have questionable stuff coming back, because it's not just involving valves, it's,
Right.
you know, work with Doug and Bob on, before you make an absolute yes or no, because we need to say, is it something that we're gonna continue to stock and sell, or is it something that we've definitely made the decision to
Right.
replace the whole product line?
Okay.
Yes, that's a good question. Someone might have a backflow preventer, a plumbing potable water item that's got lead in it, and they want to return it. And, you know, you have no use for it.
And
We
as
have-
soon as it gets out to contractors that they ought to be checking their trucks and they ought to be checking their inventories, I think we'll have more inquiries about what can and what cannot be returned.
Yeah, plumbing companies out there, service companies, trucks full of valves, and, you know, at some point, it's gonna be,
And we get those once in a while. We're
Obsolete.
cleaning out our truck, here's what we wanna bring you.
we have placards. I didn't bring any in, but they're counter displays, and it's got a valve on a styrofoam tray with a plastic wrap like you see in a supermarket. It said valves have an expiration date. So we have a few counter
cute.
displays and banners if you want for your,
I got one to put downstairs.
for your counter, yeah.
Get some of those info counters, yeah.
Okay. So, any other low lead, I just wanted to go over some new stuff. We have a lot of things happening, exciting stuff. One that's gonna affect you is in our industrial ball valves. We're going to NXT, Super Teflon. It's a DuPont product, and it's going to replace 01 and 02. It's a more durable, high temp, high performing Teflon. It eliminates the glass filler. It takes higher temperature. So we're gradually moving that into stock, and we're gradually moving down our 01, 02 inventory. As we run out of 02, we're going to start shipping NXT. The model number will change. A 20 SSOR-02 will be a 20 SSOR N1. It might help you with your inventory management in maintaining different seat materials. You can have one valve to fit a variety of applications. Glass filler with popcorn, O2 seat with popcorn and caustic, certain chemical services. It's not the case with the NXT, so it takes the place of O1. It has higher temp to replace O2, so we're going to keep the O3. Even though this goes as high as the O3, we're going to, in temperature, we're going to keep the O3 for 250-pound steam. But you might find this works in some of your O3 applications. So I want to make you aware of that. It's coming. We actually, I'm starting to see a lot of valves with NXT show up into stock. So we're building that inventory, preparing for the change.
So you're saying that's gonna be a right for, I don't know, when we deal with the O3, it's basically, we'll say, are you using it for steam?
Right.
But you're saying that this N1's gonna be okay for up to 250 now?
No.
No.
We're going to keep the O3 for 250.
Okay.
It'll be good to 150.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Will you
And
be,
even higher. Yeah.
you'll be notifying us before you ship that it'll be a different product coming in
You know, we'll
on our
have.
PO?
Yeah. We haven't gotten that far yet, but we need to tell you that as this change goes forward. You know.
Because if you don't, Joey will take care of it,
Yeah.
let you know. Right, Joey? We like to know about changes before they happen.
Yeah. We still have, I know I had an
Joey.
inquiry yesterday for 5 half-inch 300-pound F90s. We had 4 with O2 and 1 with NXT. So it was, that valve was getting to that point of, but we have a lot of 20s yet with O2 seats. So,
Just as long as you acknowledge us
Yeah, we'll-
back before you
yeah,
ship it,
yeah.
we're pretty,
I'll talk with Brian, and we'll just keep an eye on this change as it moves
Is
forward.
pricing any different with the new
Same.
seats? Same price?
Same price, yeah. It's just gonna be a gradual phase-in type of thing.
I don't think he even brought a pen. Okay, he's wearing a pencil.
This NXT, Jamesbury's had NXT in their valves for some time. And when there was a Jamesbury spec and it was NXT, it was hard to match up with O2 because the temperature didn't go as high. So it kind of became, then you started taking exception to the specification. You could go O3, but it wasn't quite the same, you know. So it's a welcome change. It's been a lot of study, you know, on the impact, and so that's coming. Let's see. There's a cut sheet. You can't read it too well, but the graph here, that's the NX curve going out to 500 degrees. That's a 20 series cut sheet. I could get that for you, Jim. There's the F90. And again, we got the NX line coming out here. Okay, on press. Press is one of our fastest growing items, and we've been adding to that. You folks have been buying some from us. We've added stainless ball and stem to the press ball valve line. We have a check valve. I think we have one here, the 969. We have a press check. Coming out with low lead press in the next probably 60 days. Low lead press will be available. And you can find those cut sheets on the website. We've gotten fire safe approval on high performance butterfly valves, 12-inch and down. They're released for production and now available. We've expanded our med gas, extended tube, oxygen clean line. We've been targeting that industry. So we have valves in various configurations to fit the hospital boxes and cabinets. We've been making some special manifold valves for oxygen service. So it's maybe something you might want to keep in mind, you sales guys. And then we've come out with a new extension handle. You might have come across the nib seal handle that NIPCO pushes. It's a plastic insulated handle for commercial applications, and the intent is that it won't condensate or drip from temperature changes. We see it specified a lot. We now will have one very soon, and there's a cut sheet on the check. And here's kind of a picture of what the handle will look like. It's got the plastic housing. Then there's a memory stop sleeve. There's styrofoam insulation and a cap. What's unique about ours, as opposed to the nib seal, you'll be able to adjust the memory stop from the top. You can't do that with NIPCO. NIPCO, you actually have to take the handle apart and get down inside the insulation to change the memory position. So we'll have kind of a one-up on the nib seal, and again, this should be out this summer, next couple months. So some new things coming from Milwaukee. And I think that might, just a reminder, high performance butterfly valves. That line is now being mass produced by us. It's been a high growth item, very successful. We got good pricing. We now have a source for the big diameter stuff where we go up to 36 inch on 150 pound. And it's an item you can sell. We did a pump room at University of Virginia. They had all old Jenkins gate valves, and they were redoing the pump room. They went all high performance. Had a contractor make spool pieces. University of West Virginia did a new steam station. They had gate valves horizontal. They could never get them to shut off. They worked maybe one time, but tough application for a gate. They were doing the replacing the control valves, and they put in all new high performance shut off valves, and couldn't be happier. They exercise them routinely, much easier to do than a gate. So the high performance gives you an item that you can upgrade a customer from a gate or a rubber line butterfly valve. There's no worry about the liner fitting the application as in a rubber seated. Teflon seat and the high performance is not going to react with most water additives or chemicals. So just keep it in mind. Just we bought Shaw. It's been over 5 years, and the line is doing real well for us. And that's being made over in our plant in China. We're making it over there. Give us a call if you're in a competitive situation too. And that, I think, sums it up for our first session. So, anything else I can answer for you?
Where, you said about the seal for the no lead, where is that? Like if a customer wants us to give them proof of that,
Okay.
on the paperwork.
Catalog?
Yeah,
Are you looking for the stamping of the,
He said
Water
there'll be
seal?
the stamps.
on the submittal?
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a,
the certificate, yeah.
Like I said, I thought
That's what I meant to say.
that's why I had the valve out there.
is, well, the model numbers, it's the same model number you knew, except it has a UP in front of it. UP BA 100,
Okay.
UP BA 150.
Okay,
Water
Oh, okay.
Quality Associates.
okay.
I think NIPCO's using Water Quality Associates, and SF's another one. There's maybe half a dozen third-party companies that do approvals. So it could vary from manufacturer, but that's on the cut sheet. If you looked at our valve, nowhere on the valve does it say lead-free, low lead. We have a white handle, and that's recognizable, and we have our code numbers. So we're going to change the markings. So when you look at the valve, if you're not familiar with our code numbers, there'll be something on it to designate
Like NL or
LF, something like that, yeah,
Yeah.
NL.
Cast in the,
cast right
Yeah.
in it, okay.
that's not gonna be
Yeah.
removable.
But that'll be a running change. On the forge valves, it's easy because those valves are pressed, and those things wear out.
Right.
And so we'll add the lettering as we move forward.
Yeah, I saw it on
But
here, but
there's
on
the
this one, I don't see anything.
Third party
That's
approval.
actually, I thought that was the ultra pure rather long one. But this mark, we can't have the guys in the field trying to figure out every number and
Right.
codes on them. So that's where he's talking about having the valve cast with the letter designations showing.
Put that little order
It's,
symbol there.
the low lead is a evolving issue, product line, so it's new for everyone, and I anticipate there'll be changes as we go forward, and this thing kicks in nationally. So, if you see a need to carry some of it, don't wait until December. Okay? So, but anyway, you have time to do some planning.
He's not here, honey.
Yeah.
Next meeting.
We've got a plan going on.
Okay. I'm sure you're hearing a lot about it. It's the hot topic
Oh,
in our industry.
We already get quotes and orders,
Yeah.
you know, that people are requesting
Mhm.
that we quote no lead or lead-free.
Yeah. Yeah, we got, in fact, 2 months ago, we got hammered on brass, low lead brass, in states where it's not being enforced yet.
Right.
And it's really people just trying to get ahead of the curve.
We even have guys calling back saying, I forgot to tell you, they need to be.
Oh, really?
Are they giving it to you from a specification, or are they just telling you that that's what they want to use in the application?
They're
Is it
just,
written?
I mean, that's just what they're asking for. It doesn't-
But we do see it in the engineering where they're starting to write more of this in as they're educated, because we cover more products than valves, but the engineering community is starting to write in even though it doesn't apply to Pennsylvania yet.
Yeah, and, you know, engineers, I'm sure in their spec, no matter what they have in their spec, somewhere there's a clause that says must meet applicable codes and regulations.
That's their disclaimer.
Yeah. But I saw a job, it was a Pennsylvania job, and it was out in Pittsburgh. The valves they specified were leaded valves, but they had in another section of the spec, it said valves for potable water must meet whatever. So if you didn't read through the whole thing,
Right.
you could have missed that statement. I think the mechanical job, the contractor list, is one of the easiest things, because that's generally broken down, plumbing, you know, steam, what have you. It's the guy with no spec calling you up on the phone or walking into your counter that doesn't know what he wants, you know, or, you know, type of thing, so.
And our larger mechanical guys are gonna know about this, and already know about it. They're reading their journals and getting it. It's the smaller guys that, and that's really, I think, what we're hearing on the streets, is some people know about it and are preparing themselves, and then there's the others that look at you like, what are you talking about?
You get a shrug of the shoulders, you know, no, I'll wait till it happens, or, you know.
I'll wait till I get caught.
Yeah.
That's the one I hear the most.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
I can see
That's
that.
the one I hear
Yeah.
the most. Just, hey, until somebody tells me to change.
But you don't want to be in that position.
Oh, no, not us. I'm
No,
just
I
saying
know.
I can
I
see
know.
our
That's why I said
customers.
Police it out to your door. where
Yeah,
you
that's,
can-
I have, you know, in Maryland, when this changed, the distributor said, you know, we're just gonna do it. You know, some counties were, some weren't, and the wholesales were like, I'm not messing with it, I'm not taking a chance. I'm changing it, so. It's interesting, I have a distributor that's PVF, industrial, they bought some, but not a lot. And then I have a distributor who's more on the wholesale plumbing, residential plumbing. Completely switched over. 90% of what they buy now is low lead. So it depends on what market you're in, you know. So,
Any other questions?
that's it.
Good? Ready to start
Anybody
next week?
participating in the incentive